let's talk.
So in the last episode,
Yes.
You asked a beautiful, explosive question, and we thought we'd save it for this episode because it deserves some quality conversation.
Yes. And before we get into it, I just want to put a blanket statement out there that goes to everything that we say. We're talking about us,
Yes.
our opinions, our experiences, our education. It is not a formula that somebody else that we're saying this is the way it should be done. We're simply talking about what we do and why we do it this way for now.
Exactly, and it may change.
It may change
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
To us next week, we might go, I've changed my belief, I've changed the way I do something. And so, exactly.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we're going to just let's have a look at the video and see
what caused the explosivity.
Yes,
it's not a word.
It can be now.
So I don't think we have the volume on this. Were you clicking or you saying good or both? Maybe?
I was saying both. Sometimes I was just feeding, so if the behaviour was just I was just feeding the whole time. Sometimes if I saw the moment the foot came up and hit my hand, I clicked with my mouth or say good and give the treat.
Wait a minute.
Pause.
Wait a minute. So you said sometimes I don't click.
Yes.
I just give food.
Yes.
Treats. Sometimes you click with the mouth, tongue click.
Yes.
And sometimes you said good.
Yes.
Wait. That can't be. You're not supposed to do that.
Who says you're not supposed to do that? I don't like being told what not to do.
But later on you explained to me why you make those choices, and I thought it was very interesting. So.
Yeah, definitely. So, so the way I see markers, so a click, whether it's tongue click, a verbal good, I put them all under the category of markers. So it's a marker signal.
And a marker signal is?
It's information to a learner that's being paired with the availability of something that's reinforcing. So a sound, a flash of a light, it could be hand movement, it could be something that doesn't have meaning. So a hand moving doesn't have meaning. But if a hand constantly moves into a treat bag before the animal gets a treat, it happens so closely in time that it takes on meaning. The meaning it takes on is food is coming, or petting is coming, or the leash is going to get put on, or you're going for a walk. And so there's so many things in life, so when you get off the sofa and your dog go running into a kitchen as you walk in that direction, why would that be meaningful? Because enough times it's being paired with you stand up or you say dinner time and then they get fed. So when we condition or we teach a marker, we establish a marker, often what we're doing is we're pairing it with availability of food or toys or praise or something that functions as a reinforcer.
So a marker could be just a physical signal.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a word or a click or okay.
Yeah. And even if we haven't established something actively as a marker, because learning's happening all the time, the organism's always learning, markers are being established all the time. For example, I'm in a puppy training class, we have a line of people, and say you've got a puppy over here that's barking, and we say let's ignore the puppy. Now I'm not saying that's what we should do, but just an example, let's say ignore the puppy, and I'm continue teaching the class, and while I'm teaching I'm walking backwards and forwards, side to side, away from the puppy's over here, I'm over here, and I just walk backwards and I carry on teaching. The barking continues to happen. I think we've taken away most of the reinforcers for the barking. I realised what could be maintaining it was me in the class. Often when I walk towards a puppy, I'm always giving out treats. So my movement becomes paired with availability of food. Chirag approaches, the likelihood is food's going to appear. So now the learner's engaging in something. It could be the learner's shouting, screaming, talking. It could be they're a dog and they're barking, or they're whining or biting the leash. And you might say, I didn't do anything, I ignored them. But it could be that you've paired eye contact inadvertently with availability of attention, or you've established I take a few steps towards you and something happens, and that functions as a reinforcer. And so often we're not even aware of these things, but we're shaping behaviour with it, because when something becomes established as a new reinforcer, it needs to be backed up most of the time. But even if it's not followed every time with something that's backed up, it still functions to strengthen behaviour. So many times your dog does something and you just say good boy, good boy, good boy, and the dog does more of that behaviour. That behaviour increases. But you haven't given a treat every single time. Now if you did it long enough and good boy didn't mean anything because there was nothing associated with good boy, it would become invaluable. It would become unmeaningful.
Unless for some reason the words coming out of your mouth the dog wanted
exactly
to hear.
If the words coming out of your mouth within themselves are reinforcing, then that would be continue strengthening behaviour. So there's so many things that mark behaviour. And for me what's really interesting is anytime I'm walking my dog, I'm doing things day to day. So with Cody, if I come back from a walk and I've got a little porch area, so I come back from a walk, I pick up the towel. I come back from a walk, I open the gate to get into our drive, I come to my front door, I've got my handle on the front door, a hand on the front of the handle, turn the key. As I do that, I open the door, he waits, he gets a treat. Then I walk in, I call him in, he gets another treat. I then go to put the keys and I put them into the second door, and I turn round, grab the towel, I kneel down, and he's standing in front, he gets a treat. Then I start to ask for feet and he gets more treats. Now, in the beginning, me putting keys in the door didn't mean anything. But now, just me walking back into that front driveway and opening that front gate has become meaningful because that predicts the treats coming. You can also see when I open the front gate, his tail's wagging more. And what I can do is just to prove a point in terms of, does that gate opening now function as a reinforcer because it's being paired enough with availability of food and good things, is I can ask for a new behaviour outside the gate. So do a hand touch or do something and just open the gate, and that behaviour gets stronger. And so then when we start going, I want to train something new, we can go, I don't have to give a treat every moment, because there's so many things within day-to-day life that function as reinforcers, and these are also markers in certain situations, depending how you want to use them. And so that's how I think of, it's a very broad way of looking at it. And I also use specific markers, like a click equals treat. I pair most of my markers with, when I mark, you get food, you get toys, you get access to playing with the other dog, you get access to playing with people. So a marker doesn't just mean hot dogs are coming, because your motivational state is changing all the time. And so I want my marker to be meaningful, that what you've just done equals any one of these possibilities.
Right, because you might be full of hot dogs.
Exactly.
So I need to switch to
something else changes. But my click stays powerful, my marker stays powerful, because it's paired with so many available different reinforcers. And that could be another conversation with itself. But going back a step, now when I'm teaching a learner, the reason my marker becomes reinforced, becomes meaningful, and has the power to strengthen behaviour, but also gives the animal information that you can now collect food, or you can now collect. It has two purposes. One is it strengthens behaviour. The second one, it tells the animal, or gives the animal information what's coming next. It functions as a cue.
Okay.
So when I give a marker, the marker gains its meaning because of its pairing with food or whatever. So sometimes if I'm right in front of the learner and my dog is there, he's opening his mouth, or the foot's coming up, I can just feed, because the moment his foot starts coming up, my hand starts to move, and the hand moving is food's coming. And so I don't see a reason to add more noise in them, unless it's going to be meaningful noise and it's going to help the learner. The learner's going to benefit from that noise.
So you have marked the behavior that you are looking for by raising the food, which says to this particular animal, because of your history, food is now coming. So it doesn't have to be a short, sharp sound.
Yes.
But it can be.
It can
because
be.
That's nice for timing, right? That
yes.
Boom, that. Yeah. But you're saying the initiation of moving something is also immediate and
exactly
on the mark.
Yeah. And if I didn't want the learner to, if the learner has to look to see if the hand's moving, but I want the learner's eyes somewhere else, that might tell me, okay, now it's the time to add another tool in. I want a verbal marker as opposed to just feed, and because I want the animal to be less reliant on looking at my hand in this situation.
So you've thought it through why you're doing these certain things. It's not just, I forgot, next time I will do something. You have reasons that are going so fast in your head, you may not even know you're doing.
And I think it's important to discuss those reasons. I like the fact you asked that, because how will people know when do I select which one? For me is, if I don't want I visual contact to look for a marker, I want the animal to keep their vision somewhere else, then it's important for me to have an audible marker or a tactile marker, meaning touch your body and say that equals food's coming.
Yeah. That was one of the reasons why we liked the clicker when we first started using it with the gymnasts.
Yeah.
Because quite often they were upside down or not facing or flipping in the air, and I certainly didn't want them looking at me or looking at something.
Yeah.
Or I needed the marker to go to them.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't want them looking for the mark. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is this right? Is this right? No, I needed it to get to them very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that click was there. And certainly salient in a room full of people talking.
Yeah.
It was not a sound they heard very often, so they didn't have to anticipate or figure out what that mark was.
And I think it's really important because that's consistent, and also so another factor is safety, like you mentioned previously, and risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's lots of noise going on, and they have to differentiate our voice between all the other noise, whereas if I use a whistle or I use an actual clicker, that's going to cut through. It's going to be much safer. That's the option I go for.
If they have that history with that sound.
Exactly.
Right. Don't assume that a click will do anything.
Yeah,
yes,
so these noises don't mean anything until we teach the learner what they mean, both from we establish them as a strengthening tool, so they can reinforce behavior, and also they become meaningful as a cue.
Yeah.
I always think of conditioned clickers not just in the way of they need to become strengthening now, they need to be able to strengthen other behavior, but they also have an antecedent, a cue, meaning. So they give the animal information as to what's available. Because it's always going to function as a cue, and it's always going to function as a consequence. So we can talk more about what is a cue, maybe in a different video.
Yeah.
But and I'll explain to you how what that looks like. Sorry. No, go on.
So if you don't use the word cue,
Yeah.
what does it function as?
Information on what to do next. Information.
Yeah. On what to do next.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Because if I click, that is going to strengthen the behavior that just occurred. But the animal doesn't stop behaving.
Mm-hmm.
The animals are going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do? They're going to turn to human to look for food. Or if you've taught them, when you hear the click, you keep your head still, you keep your body still. For a guide dog, you may just want, I look forward, I stay looking forward. For them, the click equals hold still. But it still strengthens the behavior that just occurred. And we can teach a click equals, it's just strengthen the response that's just occurred, and we can observe future behavior to see that.
Yep.
It's also said to the animal, giving the animal information. Now, if you turn around and face human and look towards a hand, you're going to get a treat. If you do that any other time, you're not going to get that treat. It's not available.
Right. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take what you just said and jump back to the gymnast. It was information on what to do next. And what that next thing was is to say, oh, where am I? That this was right, store that information. Right, so click meant yes, where you are is the right place, and now I want them to go store that. So like, oh, where am I? Oh, my toes are actually together. That's the good thing to do. So it did act as information on what to do next, and what to do next was think about where you are and store that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And I see benefits of and I'm not, for me, I think we need to be open-minded with these discussions. A lot of times you hear people go, well, clickers are best because it's a new sound, it's different, but really I think there's not great evidence to go that just using a click is different to using... There is some evidence, people talk about there's a difference in the brain, but personally I haven't seen any papers that convince me strongly enough. There's not enough sample sizes, not enough great data to go, this is a science. There's information coming out, we don't have... And for most people training most animals, for most purposes, and I work with animals for show purposes, for research purposes, you can use most types of markers and get really strong, clean behavior. And I think sometimes we get so in our heads, no, it has to be this. And actually, if we took a step back and go, hold on, what happens if I use a good as a marker? What happens if I use this as a marker? What happens if I use that as a marker, or my hand movement? And suddenly start to observe and learn, and suddenly go, oh, I was always taught this, or I always thought this, but actually all of these other things are usable. And the reason I want to make that point is a lot of my work is with everyday people, meaning these are people who aren't wanting to be trainers, or they're pet owners, or people who are caregivers, but training their animal and being the best trainer, being the best technician isn't their goal. They like the animal to just stop jumping up when they're eating dinner, or to stop knocking the child over. So if I'm going to go in there and my focus is they need to learn how to click in the best timing, or they need to know how to use a clicker, what I used to find when I used to do that is the human gets so like, okay, this trainer knows what they're talking about, I trust them, I'm learning how to use this clicker, but then you have to teach them all the mechanics and get it all right. By the time you've done that, the dog is still jumping on them. Now you have to then use it to teach the dog to do something else, whereas I could have just used a marker they already have available to them, or not focused on getting a verbal mark at the right time, but just focus on when your dog's feet are on the mat, throw food. When on the mat, throw food. So the feet on the mat, throw food.
Yeah.
And if that timing is perfect, that mark of hand movement is sufficient to reinforce that behaviour, and the human gets that goal and they go, I want to learn more from you.
Yeah.
And so I just want to open this conversation up. I'm not saying clickers aren't great. I use clickers a lot. I use whistles a lot. I use these different things. But I really do think we've got a whole school of thought of trainers that we're educating who really become almost believing that there's one way, or you have to be so strict. And actually, yes, in theory, if that noise is 100% consistent and it's 100% this and it's 100% that, that's going to be the best possible option. However, the other options work amazingly. They don't confuse the learner. They get high quality behaviour. You get behaviour quickly, and actually they could be more practical. And I think your question about risk is really important, and safety. And we have to ask all of those things before we decide what we're going to select as the tool we're going to use. But be open to all of these possibilities.
Different tools for different...
Yeah.
You've got to have a toolbox.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody who picks it up and goes, this is awesome, and
Yeah.
their timing is spectacular, and they understand reinforcement, and then okay, thumbs up.
Exactly.
But if they're like...
Yeah.
And again... Going over to the human side of this, when I brought out the clicker, because I had used it and loved it and saw the potential, I'm like, you got to use this, it works so awesome. And when they saw me use it, it did.
Yes.
But the thought of them using it on their kids, on their husband, right? There was so much to educate about the use of it.
Yeah.
It just wasn't going to happen in this world with these particular people. And so for me to say this is the best way to do it, when they were obviously telling me, listen to your learner, this is not the best way, Theresa, I, as a responsible teacher, needed to hear some of their input. And if it wasn't a clicker, if you could just say good, and they're like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I've got to go I've got to meet the learner in the middle. Now, to your point, if they love it, maybe they want to know more. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's not their priority. They don't care. But if I don't meet them here in the beginning, I've got nothing.
And it's a conversation. When your client or learner comes to you, it's not about, I'm teacher, you're learner, you have to listen to me. We have to listen to them. And if we listen, we go, I'm truly listening, as opposed to just nodding our head and going, okay, now you do this. And it's like, you really start going, okay, these are where the reinforcers lie, because they're giving you that information. And you can get in and help them. And it's almost, okay, so you just mentioned something. So the gym, so a parent comes to you or something, or someone comes to you, like, you should use a clicker, blah, blah, blah. And it works amazingly when you do it. If you brought your dog to me and I was training a dog, I would get the clicker out, or I would get a marker out. I've got a high skill level of using it, good practice using it, I can get quick results, and I'm going to shape behaviour, I'm going to use it. I then pass the dog back to you. Am I going to spend time teaching how to use a clicker? But I've already established behaviour, now I just need you to maintain it. So what I'm going to do is say, Theresa, I'd like you to practice. My goal is, what are the key things I want Theresa to focus on? I want her to look for, when she's at home, if her dog is doing something she likes, to pay. If a dog is doing something she doesn't like, to change the situation so it makes it safe, and she can pay her dog for doing things she likes. That's the goal. So the client comes in puppy class, these are the goals I want them to take away. Look for things you like, pay them. Because if they start doing that at home, so many other problems that happen are going to disappear. Yeah. Kids stop shouting at people because they want attention, as they're getting it so many other times throughout the day. And so it's not, I don't want to teach clients in week 1 of puppy class, week 2 of puppy class, to have precision of using a marker. But what I want them to do is learn the idea that if you pay something and it's reinforcing, it's going to get stronger. Observe, look for things, and pay them. And if they're the only skills that they leave with, I feel I'm going to have better caregivers who are set up for more life, real life, with their animals. If they go to a picnic or they take their dog somewhere, always doing something good, pay them. Suddenly the dog's doing more good things throughout the day. They don't have problem behaviours. They don't need to phone a trainer. And so, but if I spent 4 weeks teaching how to use a clicker well, I don't see those clients any more better off. And a lot of times I lose clients. And I'm not saying everyone's going to lose. Maybe it's the way I was teaching it. But for me...
it definitely was.
Yeah. Because for me, it's almost like, people are like, but when are we going to stop my puppy buying? When are we going to stop them toileting? And why do you need a clicker at the right time to get, like, take your puppy out for them? If your puppy's toileting, we want to have different things they focus on. Take the puppy out this time. And so a marker can just be, what do you feel comfortable with? And so there's different times where I use these different tools. Then the other thing I'm going with this, and it's a bit like all over the place, but if you were my friend and you came to my house, you're like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm using a clicker because a trainer said to me I should do this. I'm never going to be able to explain. Well, I can, but with one lesson, I'm probably not going to be able to explain to my friend what the clicker is, because it took me years to get this idea of really well what a clicker is and why am I using it and what the real principles are. A lot of times I think we go, I know it, but we don't, there's not that depth of information isn't there. So when you try and explain to your husband or someone, it's like, that really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then you get almost those whispers that happen and the information gets muddled. So the rest of the family hear it from a different thing, and then everyone's using it slightly differently. And so if it took me months or years to really understand and define great clicker training, or what clicker training is for me, or what other people define it as, why do I expect a client in 1 hour session to become an expert on that? And then be able to relate to other family members and everyone else without the confusion.
Well, and if you want them to be that good, what you're going to do is try to teach them everything you've learned in all of those years. And this is when we get into passion talking, and the person's shaking their head yes, but you've told them everything you've learned, every conference you've gone to, everything, and they're just drowning in information.
I feel like I was passion talking at you then. I was like, this going, and then I was like, just like blurting out
that's
stuff.
why we're here. I mean, this is let's talk about the talk. So we're meant to do this. It's okay here. And that's the other point. That all of this has a place, right? Some people pick up the clicker and boy, the timing is just there and it just works. And quite frankly, the first time I picked up a clicker and used it with my horse, it worked the very first time and it changed my life and the trajectory from there. Yeah. But then there's 99 other people who it's not their priority, right? It's not that they're not good or bad. It's just wherever they are, that knowledge and that skill is not a priority. So therefore they're not going to stop and go to the internet like I did and then read a book and then talk to somebody. And then they went, cool, I'm going to go make dinner. Which is just where we are in the world. So sometimes, to your point, you can hand a clicker to somebody and they get it and you're like, oh, I wish everybody could do this. So we're not saying that nobody.
And I think people should.
It's a big stretch. You know, they might love it the very first time.
And I think you should teach a markers and a clicker as a marker and use these tools and teach them. But I just want to say, because I'm seeing at the moment so many trainers, that's what they are taught and they're amazing at it. Yeah. And you should have that skill. I'm not saying don't have the skill and it's not a great skill. I think it's a fantastic skill. I just want to say, be open to what you might call more old-fashioned training or just less precision training. And in terms of, you're still precise, but you're not using a clicker. But you're not going, I'm in a training session, but you can just throw food at the timing is there, the animal's engaging the behaviour, the learner's doing. When I say throw food, I don't physically mean always food, but just saying, oh, what colour are you what cartoon character are you colouring in today? Or just spending a moment with that child when they're colouring something in, sitting there quietly, playing on their Game Boy, sitting down with them and talking about what, if it's reinforcing, talk about at that moment, or playing the game with them, it would be throwing the treats for me. Or you walk in the room and the dog is on the couch while you're cooking, you just take a handful of carrots and throw them towards the dog, or literally, and those things are going to strengthen behaviours throughout the day in real life.
Well, and it encourages the human to look for behaviors they want. Yes. Right? So you're almost training the human to get that skill first. You get that skill, then we can worry about marking it sometime else. But just say, oh, I see it. Good. Okay, pay that, and we'll work about finessing it. Yeah.
And the clicker is a scalpel. So for me, I'm not going to, if you can achieve something without a scalpel, and sometimes if you put a scalpel on something and you don't know how to use it, the scalpel's going to go flying off the handle, and or you're going to what do you call it, dull the scalpel, you're going to make the blade less sharp. So if you get a scalpel and start hacking on this, it's going to make it less sharp. When you need precision, the clicker is such a beautiful and a good marker, not just a clicker, but any other good marker is such a fantastic, precise tool that's going to help. But in this situation, if I'm training Harry and I'm teaching, I was like, I'm putting like puzzle pieces together at the moment, and I could have finesse little points, but I'm just going with foot raises, I want to pay that. Foot touch with my hand, I want to pay that. I'm going to pay these puzzle pieces, so eventually when I come to a training session, I have the puzzle piece of foot on hand, puzzle piece of foot lift towards me. And sometimes his foot's coming up and I haven't marked, but I want to pay this movement. There's nothing precise there. I don't need to
Whatever it
click.
ends up being.
I do want that. I'm just going to pay that because I want that foot movement near my hand. But if there's something really precise, I want his foot to land on this fingertip, or I want his foot to be, I don't want his foot to come up like this, I want it to come up like this. I'm going to bring my clicker out and be really precise with what I'm marking. But if I just say, Theresa, sit down please, and I don't mind how you sit, whether you sit butt first or hands first, I'm going to just, as you engage in the action, whether it's hands or butt, I don't need a clicker. For me, we can actually reinforce.
Yeah, so you're saying yes, you're sitting down, as opposed to yes, you contracted your hamstring that will lead you to the butt.
Yes. And so in a session sometimes you might see me go, why did you just bring the clicker out? And then you stop the clicking. Because there could be, within a session, I'm reinforcing lots of topographies of things that I believe are going towards the same function, the same goal. So I want foot on hand, but I'm reinforcing lots of different things. 1 minute it's paw cut lifting up, next minute it's paw touching my hand, etc. But then in a moment I might get something that I see that's really precise that I also want in that repertoire. But what I'm going to do in that moment is I start bringing my clicker, go click that muscle movement or click that precision of that placement, and when I'm getting that I'm going to click, but I'm not going to click 500 other things, because for me I think it just must be too confusing. Everything's getting clicked, it's like what isn't it? Things are getting paid, but then I'm also going to be like, bingo, I want that precision. That's where the clicker comes in. Then I stop with the clicker, and what I find is that precision, you see more of that behaviour occurring, but you also get the other general puzzle pieces being added in at the same time. So when it comes to putting it all together, I've got all the puzzle pieces there. Whereas someone else might train and go, I'm just going to train this puzzle piece, now this puzzle piece, now this puzzle piece. I'm going to have lots of precision to it. And there's times where I would do that too. But in general life, for general things, when I say general life, I mean like for living with my dog generally, if it's research, competition, something I need, someone goes, I need the animal to do this, but in this precise way, the eyes have to be here, I will do precision little bits. But when someone says to me, I'd like the dog to just go running on the bed when I walk into the house, I don't mind if the dog walks backwards. I want as long as it's safe for the dog, as long as it doesn't hurt the dog, it works for the person. The dog can go to their bed backwards, the dog can go to their bed frontwards, the dog can jump onto their bed, the dog can sit onto their bed, the dog can lie down on the bed, they can stand on the bed, just be on the bed.
Yeah.
And so where it's more, I'm just going to reinforce those puzzle pieces, bring them together, but where I want precision, I'm going to layer the puzzle pieces one at a time.
Yeah. So there's a heel position, and then there's a heel position.
Exactly.
There's an obedience heel position. Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm going to have to play with that a little bit. I think also in the human world, sometimes too much precision drains our battery. When I'm working with skill acquisition, and I'm like, it has to be like this, and it has to be like that, and it has to be like this, you can't do that for very long. So that, I love that going back and forth between we're learning and we're practicing and we're skill diving. I mean, we're precision diving, really working on a specific, where my brain has to work, and we can't do that as humans for very long. Yeah. I can't go, what is it? Was it right? Good, thanks, again. Is that right? Good, thanks, again. Sometimes I just need to move and see how it feels and see what it works. Oh, well, now I'm passion talking, and we're over our time.
It's great. Like, I've got another question I want to ask about it, so it's like length of training session, and discuss that. We can discuss that in another talk.
Okay, do you want me to write it down?
Sure.
Yes. Tell me what it is.
Length of training session.
Length of training session.
Discussing that.
Length of training session.
We'll see you guys in the next episode.